EBS 취재진은 서울을 방문한 유네스코 관계자를 직접 만나 앞으로의 계획을 들어봤는데요. 이 서울비전의 핵심 내용과 추진 방향 직접 들어보시죠.
이번에 20주년을 맞은 유네스코의 무형유산보호협약에 대한 이야기, 그리고 서울비전에 대한 내용까지 좀 더 자세히 들어가 보겠습니다. 팀 커티스 유네스코 무형유산과 과장 나와 있습니다. 과장님 반갑습니다. 네. 유네스코 무형유산보호협약에 대해서 잘 모르는 시청자들이 많습니다. 좀 어떤 의미가 있는 협약인지 설명을 부탁드리겠습니다.
So this convention was adopted by all the countries of UNESCO about 20 years ago, in fact, exactly, and we're celebrating the anniversary. Many people knew already the World Heritage Convention, but it was felt there was a need to understand a broader idea of what is cultural heritage, not just the buildings and the monuments, but really the practices, the languages, all of these things that we do, our cultural heritage that we call living heritage or intangible cultural heritage. So the convention was drafted to respond to that need, which was felt as a gap, and to raise awareness of importance of that kind of cultural heritage. And it functions like the World Heritage with lists, recognition programs to safeguard, identify in different countries, also to get countries to set up themselves programs at the national level for safeguarding intangible cultural heritage. So what do we mean by intangible cultural heritage? We mean all of those practices, representations that communities pass on from generation to generation, and which is part of their identity. But when we safeguard intangible cultural heritage, we don't just freeze it. It must be recreated in response to the realities of each generation that recreates it. So it's been a great success. We have 181 countries already signed and more coming, so nearly all countries in the world have signed this convention. And we've really seen a great response to this idea. And in 20 years it's exploded, if I might say so. Yeah.
이번에 그 협약의 미래를 담은 서울비전이 발표가 됐다고 들었습니다. 어떤 의미를 담으셨습니까?
We understand that really the first 20 years was about raising awareness, making people understand, also safeguarding, of course, and that's been largely achieved. So now the Seoul Vision is looking forward, how this various forms of intangible heritage, all of this traditional knowledge, know-how, can help us. How can we use this? How can we mobilize this to face some of the challenges, biodiversity loss, our relationship with the natural world, economic sustainability in developing countries? How about in cities, people moving to cities? How do we continue the intangible cultural heritage in cities? How can it improve livelihood in cities? So I think the convention is going towards not only recognizing and valuing intangible cultural heritage or living heritage, but really mobilizing it, and particularly where communities have had centuries of experience in addressing things. So how can we bring this into our sustainable development agenda? How can we connect this? Sustainable agriculture, food security, all of these things. Our traditional systems and knowledge and practices still have a lot of value, and how can we mobilize that? So,
말씀하신 목표를 이루기 위해서는 교육의 역할 정말 중요할 것 같습니다. 유네스코와 EBS가 앞으로 어떤 식으로 협력해 나갈 것인지도 궁금한데요. 말씀을 부탁드리겠습니다.
Education is really fundamental to safeguarding living heritage. When we talk about preserving cultural heritage, say buildings, you want to maintain the building. You want to stabilize the building so that future generations can enjoy it. But when we talk about safeguarding intangible cultural heritage or safeguarding living heritage, the only way to safeguard it is to make sure the next generation continues. So that intergenerational transmission, that putting connections between generations is the actual work of safeguarding and preserving. If the next generation are interested, they will continue. And often, maybe they won't be interested, but often they're not interested because they're not exposed to it. And you know, children spend, of course, a significant amount of time in school, out of school. So bringing together the living heritage with education systems is a critical part of safeguarding living heritage. But we've also found in many countries, it's also a great way to improve quality of education. It makes children aware of their own history, their identity, their ancestry, connects them with their communities and the schools with the communities. So there's many benefits to this, both for education and, of course, safeguarding living heritage. And that's why we're working with EBS, because there's a natural alignment, if you will. UNESCO is the United Nations educational, scientific, and cultural organization. So, and we also have a lot of programs around communication and information, a sector dealing with that. So EBS as a channel that's interested in cultural heritage and in educational content and being a television channel with capacity. So we have a natural partnership, I think, that we're working together.
네, 그럼 앞으로 유네스코가 또 무형유산의 보호를 위해서 어떤 역할을 해나가실 건지 말씀해 주시죠.
Oh, that's a big question. UNESCO will continue, as it has done now for many decades, to work in all forms of cultural heritage. We've been talking today about living heritage, intangible cultural heritage. We have, of course, also the Convention on the world's natural and cultural heritage, but we also have important work we do on museums, the illicit trafficking, trying to stop illicit trafficking and the return and restitution of stolen cultural objects. We work on underwater cultural heritage, which is also a growing area. So UNESCO will continue to work in these important areas. I think, as we said earlier, we need to connect the importance of cultural heritage to also wider social issues and societal issues. Climate change, we have a lot of issues around climate change, everybody in all sectors. Climate change is a great challenge today, but it's also a challenge in cultural heritage, conservation and safeguarding. So we're putting a lot of efforts into trying to understand how we can make sure, firstly, that some of the most important cultural heritage are not negatively affected, or we can mitigate some of the effects of climate change. But also in terms of intangible cultural heritage, living heritage, how can we mobilize cultural heritage to help us mitigate also the effects of climate change? Education systems and so on. We're looking also very much in terms of digital technologies and cultural heritage conservation. So there'll never be, the job will never be finished. We will continue working and continue engaging with all forms of cultural heritage. So that won't stop. Yeah.
네, 앞으로도 세계 무형유산을 보호하기 위한 유네스코의 활동 잘 진행되기를 기원하겠습니다. 코테스 국장님, 오늘 말씀 잘 들었습니다.